Alright, we got a very quick but some very good news for today's industry insight. As people may know, we've been kind of talking about the idea of voice actors and the voice actors union with SAG-AFTRA, which is their specific brand for radio actors, voice actors, stuff like that. And as of this week, some really good news happened regarding SAG-AFTRA's connection with the independent community and being able to allow union voice actors to work on smaller or independent games. As a news piece report on Gamma Sutra, the deal that took about 2 years to be made went through, changing some of the provisions and structure for any smaller developers who would like to hire a professional voice actor for their video game. Traditionally, when it came to video games, the voice actors in the union basically had a one-size-fits-all approach, which meant that whether you were a small independent studio or a massive company like EA, you were still negotiating with those same rates, which may be great for the voice actors, but it's not so much if you are a smaller studio or just an up-and-coming one trying to get some good talent for your game. So, from the news piece that was reported, the change involves the pay rate for actors doing contract work for an independent company. And according to their results or their reports, what they define as a lower budget game is something that is below $1.5 million. So, the new rates that were defined were that it's now a voice actor can be paid $825.50 for a 4-hour voice session or 8 hours of motion capture. You can also, instead of having a 4-hour session, cut it in half and do a 2-hour one. There is also specific considerations for very strenuous or very aggressive voice act, screams, howls, maniacal laughter, all that stuff that it may sound easy, but it can do a lot of damage to your throat, especially if you're doing it for a long period of time. But the big point about our little piece for today is that this represents a big change for allowing SAG-AFTRA members to do more in the game industry and to deal with developers who they may not have otherwise have spoken to. Because again, in the old version, even if you were just a smaller studio, you were still agreeing to whatever the amount was for a AAA or a AA company. And again, while it's always great to get high quality voice actors, and we'll talk about that in a minute, it may come at the cost of your budget. And again, for smaller studios, they may not have thousands of dollars to spend on a professional voice actor. And this was one of the big points when we talked about the SAG-AFTRA strike. I think this was about a year, maybe a year and a half ago, that many people side with the game developers saying, who the hell cares if you get someone like Troy Baker or Jennifer Hale when we just want the game? But as we have seen, there is a big difference between high quality and low quality voice acting and what it can bring to the table for enhancing your game. So with that said, let's switch to some game footage of a title that has really earned a name for itself with a great voice acting. But first, a quick thank you to the Patreon supporters. And now a quick shout out to the supporters over on patreon.com/GWBycer. And before anyone says anything, I do understand the irony of doing a video talking about voice acting and the importance of it while playing a game that's on mute. But this footage is obviously of Bastion, the title from Supergiant Games that was lauded not only for great gameplay and aesthetics, but for the voice acting as well, as the titular narrator would basically comment on everything that's going on, from what weapons we use, to how we attack, to just, of course, general story and exposition. But this was, of course, a great example of a game from a smaller studio that had high-quality voice acting. And, of course, another big example would be getting someone like Wayne June for The Darkest Dungeon and being the voice of the narrator/ancestor there. But the point is, as we have seen with the evolution of game design, that presentation really does matter. It's one of those things that, while good game design will eventually get fans and people interested in your game. The aesthetics are what will draw them in the first place. And aesthetics can be everything from a really good trailer video to concept art to even a well-organized Steam page or Kickstarter. And when it comes to voice acting, this has been a major part, especially over this last decade as game design, or I'm sorry, over the last 18 years, as the game industry grew up in terms of voice acting and presentation. For the older fans, you may remember, of course, games like Metal Gear Solid in the mid-90s as one of the first titles to feature cinematography and full voice acting along those lines. And we have seen this grown, not only in the AAA space, but with indies as well. Right now, of course, the mega darling in this example would be something like Red Dead Redemption. Red Dead Redemption 2, as Rockstar is another studio that has really invested in presentation and voice acting in terms of presenting a high-quality product. And that's kind of what this discussion regarding SAG-AFTRA and the whole point of the strike from a few years ago came into being, was the fact that people who do like high quality voice acting, we're talking voice actors like Jennifer Hale, Rob Paulson, Steve Bloom, Tress MacNeille, I could probably go on and list like 20 more people, that the quality that they bring not only brings fans of their respective actors to a product, but it also elevates the product in of itself. Now, of course, when it comes to that, this kind of pricing is not cheap. I'm actually curious for the game Where the Water Tastes Like Wine, how much it costs to get Sting to be the voice actor and narrator in that game. But that has always been the double-edged sword when it comes to voice acting, and even more so when we look at the greater issue of game developers' rights and what we were talking about with unions on that front. And that was, when it comes to a high-quality voice actor, are you really getting your money's worth, depending upon the game? If we're playing like a 8-bit throwback title, and we feature, Anthony Hopkins as the narrator, would having Anthony Hopkins in your 2D platformer really sell copies? I'm going to say no on that one. But when we talk about games that are going for a unique appeal or for telling a great story, voice acting does matter. Even if it's something as simple as what we saw in the Stanley Parable or Thomas Was Alone. Games that had very simple gameplay, but the narrator does bring more to the forefront, or the voice acting. And this is why this negotiation with SAG-AFTRA, this change in their guidelines, does present a major step forward for indie developers. Again, in the old version of this, the only way you were going to get a professional voice actor to voice a character or do mocap for your game was you either had to hope that they weren't part of the union, or that you had the money to cover what the standard going rates were for hiring a union member. With these changes, it should make this a lot easier for smaller developers to get professional voice actors, and by another point, or by extension, allow for greater quality in a lot more independent games. So, with that said, let's wrap things up here for today. Hopefully, this is a sign of things improving with regards to the SAG-AFTRA and their work with the game industry. Again, when it comes to the AAA side, though, I'm not sure how things are going. I would love to talk to a professional voice actor more about things on that front. But with that said, thank you so much for watching today's Industry Insight. Be sure to check out our Patreon if you would like to get mentioned on our thank you list, and come back for daily discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. Until next time, take care. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoy things, be sure to do all the liking and subscribing that the kids are doing these days. Check out our Discord channel linked down below, where we hang out and chat game design, and come back later tonight for our regular streamings. But that's it, and tune in for more great content here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games.